Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, December the 6th, 2020. It is currently 9:16 a.m. Central Time, and I'm coming to you live from Victory Baptist Church located here in Ovalo, Texas. I am supposed to be on the air in about 45 minutes for the Sunday School hour here at Victory Baptist Church because we are live streaming only, no in-person service today because of the COVID situation. And so that means I don't have a lot of time, but that's what I'm going to try to do here is I'm not going to try to worry about if I can complete this. I'm going to at least try to introduce this and give us something to meditate on this Sunday morning. You may hear this today. You may hear this Monday, Tuesday, whenever you hear this. I hope you will use this and use it for a time of some spiritual meditation for your own spiritual growth and edification. I think what we're doing in this series is important. I mean, obviously, you may not know what series you're listening to. You're listening to a mini-series. I don't even know if we can call it a mini-series. You're listening to a very large series in which your host, I'm taking you through the book, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. We're going chapter by chapter, word by word. We're looking at what he has to teach us in this book. It's a classic book, a book that has had a great influence on many streams of theology. In other words, many different theological streams has been influenced by this book and have promoted this book. It has a prominent place in church history. It's considered a Christian classic by many. It's written by Thomas à Kempis, who was a Catholic monk. We don't agree a lot with his theology, but this book still provides a lot to really get us to think about, challenge us. Again, we don't have to agree with everything. By no means am I saying we should agree with everything, but we're at least looking at what he had to say, thinking about it, challenging ourselves, and I think it's been a fun series. Some of you have enjoyed it. Some of you offer me great feedback. I greatly appreciate it. And we'll see what's in store for us today. All right. So we don't have a lot of time. So let's just jump in. As always, I have two translations of The Imitation of Christ right here. I tend to go back and forth. Sometimes that confuses me because when I'm reading the older translation, I may be thinking, oh, wait, the newer translation states it this way. And that sometimes has caused me problems, but I still think it's beneficial to have two different translations here. So sometimes I think it's beneficial, sometimes maybe it's not, but we will see. Today, we're in book 1. Remember, The Imitation of Christ is broken up into different books, different sections. We're in book 1, chapter 15. Book 1, chapter 15 of The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. Are you ready? Here we go. Chapter 15. In this translation that I'm having, the chapter title is this: Works Done for Love. Works Done for Love. That's an interesting chapter title. It makes me think immediately like, okay, I can do certain things as a Christian, certain works, but am I actually doing them for love? Am I actually doing them for love? Or am I actually doing them for something else? Why am I doing what am I doing? Is it being motivated by love or is it being motivated by something else? So right there is already plenty to think about and meditate on. But let's see where Thomas à Kempis goes with this, and we'll allow him to lead us in the direction he wants us to go, and then maybe we can come back to that concept of of examining our works to know if we're doing them because it's motivated by love or we're doing it for our own self-interest. Well, you know what? I think in some ways, I will add this. This is not Thomas à Kempis, but I will add this. I think all works, I think everything we do is motivated by love. It's either motivated by love for self, it's motivated by love for another person, or it's motivated by love for God. I mean, if you think about it, everything we do is motivated by some kind of love. Self-love, the love of others, or the love of God. So I think all works are done out of love. There's a love involved. It's self, others, or God. I think there may be some truth to that. Maybe we should really explore that at some future point. Every time I do that, I'm like, oh, we should explore that. And I'm like, well, there's like 50 other things we're trying to work on right now. But here we go. I was looking the other day. I think I have produced over 900 and something episodes in 2020, and we're not even done with the year yet. And you know what? I still haven't even completed 80% of what I want to do. It's just amazing. There's just always so many things to study and to learn and to think about. But here we go. Let's see what Thomas Kempis has to say. Works done for love. For no worldly thing, nor for the love of any man is any evil to be done. I want you to hear carefully. For no worldly thing, nor for the love of any man is any evil to be done. We should not do evil for a worldly thing or for the love of any man. If we love someone, we don't do evil for that person, and we don't do evil for any worldly thing. Even if we love a worldly thing, we don't do evil for love or for a worldly thing, for the love of any man. That's just a very powerful point. He's got a scripture reference here that I thought was interesting. He's got Matthew chapter 18. Now, sometimes his use of scripture is questionable, but that is, if you read the church fathers, sometimes you'll be like, wait, what are they doing with that scripture? Yeah, their hermeneutic was, we could get into a discussion of their hermeneutic sometimes in the early church. But this is what he has, Matthew chapter 18, verse 8. Wherefore, if thy hand or thy foot offend thee, cut them off and cast them from thee. It is better for thee to enter into life halt or maimed, rather than having 2 hands or 2 feet to be cast into everlasting fire. In other words, it's better. It's better to cut something off and hurt yourself than doing evil, right? It's better to chop off an arm, a leg, whatever, than to do evil and be cast into hell. That's his idea. So take that concept. So therefore, it is better not to do evil, or for no worldly thing, nor for the love of any man is any evil to be done. In other words, it's better, in a sense, to cut off the person, in a sense, lose the person you love, rather than doing evil. In other words, it's better to lose that worldly thing or to lose the person you love rather than doing evil. You can't do evil for the worldly thing or for the person you love. That's a powerful concept. So, in other words, at this point, the question would be, what motivates you? What's your motivation? Is your motivation your love for that person or that desire for that worldly thing? Or is your ultimate desire a love and a desire to please God? Because if you're willing to please God, you're going to chop off anything that would ultimately lead you to evil. All right? That's a very powerful point. All right? Now, but listen to what he says here. But, all right, that's interesting. So he gives us this principle, but he's kind of go in a different direction. But yet, for the profit of one who stands in need, a good work is sometimes without any scruple to be left undone, or rather changed for a better. So in other words, sometimes for the profit of the one who stands in need, sometimes for what will actually profit someone, it is perfectly okay for a good work to be left undone, or rather changed for a better. So in other words, you can't do evil for someone you love, but sometimes it's for the better of the person that you don't do certain things. Right? This is trying to give us a very balanced look at this idea. He continues, for by doing this, a good work is not lost, but changed into a better. So in other words, it's okay sometimes not to do something or to withhold doing something because it actually may be better. All right. Now let's see. Here we go. Without love, the outward work profits nothing. So if we do something without love, no matter how good the external work is, it profits absolutely nothing. All right. And he quotes, he's got 2 passages here, Luke 7:47. Luke 7:47. Luke 7:47. Luke 7:47, wherefore I say unto thee, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, the same loveth little. All right? And then, got 1 Corinthians 13. 1 Corinthians 13 and then verse 3. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 3. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned and have not charity or have not love, it profiteth me nothing. So if you do an external work and it's done without love, it's useless. It profits absolutely nothing. There's no benefit in it. No spiritual benefit, no God-pleasing benefit, all right? But whatsoever is done of love, be it ever so little, all right, no matter how little, no matter how contemptible it may be in the sight of the world, it becomes wholly fruitful. Now, I want you to hear this. Whatever is done of love, whatever you do out of love, right? No matter how little, no matter if the world looks at it in a very derogatory way, they say that's stupid, that's dumb, that's foolish. No matter how small it may be, no matter how insignificant it may be in the sight of the world, it becomes wholly fruitful. It becomes wholly fruitful. It becomes profitable. So doing the smallest thing for love, it's a profitable thing. No matter how foolish people may see it, no matter how stupid people may see it, it's profitable. Now, the profit here is spiritual profit. So when you do something and you're doing it because of love, it's a profitable thing. And here, and this is what, and I've got to apply this to 2020. We've gotten to this huge debate within the church to wear a mask or not wear a mask. But if you wear a mask, no matter how many people think it's foolish, no matter how many people say it's stupid, not in the world, within the church, if you're doing it out of love, it's not a foolish thing. It's a fruitful thing. If your motivation is love, and that's what our motivation should be. Our motivation should be love. Our motivation should be love, to try to help and prevent and stop a pandemic and to help people. And you may be convinced that it's not beneficial, but just take the chance that it's 10% beneficial, 15% beneficial. Even if you believe it's just a minimal benefit. Any minimal benefit in order to possibly show love for other people, that's fruitful. That's what God calls us to do, is to love people. All right? I think that's very important. He continues here, all right? For God weighs more the love out of which a man works than the work which he does. Whoa, that's important. Listen to that. For God weighs more the love out of which a man works than the work which he does. God weighs more. In other words, God sees more value in and listen, the love out of which a man works. It's the love that motivates the work. That's what God sees. That's more important than the work which is actually done. It's the love behind it. So why do you do what you do? Is it motivated by love? Now, listen, the contrast is you can't do evil for the people you love. You can't do evil like you love someone. You can't do evil. In other words, whatever you do for someone you love or for anyone, it's got to be motivated by love. And you can't do evil, obviously, for love. In other words, love is not an excuse to do evil, right? If you love someone, then you do good works out of love. Right, that's very important. It's just an interesting contrast he has going on here. All right. For God weighs more the love out of which a man works than the works which he does. He does much who loves much. He does much who does a thing well. He does well who serves the community rather than his own will. I want you to hear this all again. God weighs more the love out of which a man works than the work which he does. He does much who loves much. He does much who does a thing well. And he does well who serves the community rather than his own will. This has to be the thing that should dominate Christian motivation, is we do things out of love. We do good. We love. We won't do evil for those we love. We won't do evil for worldly things, but everything we do is to be motivated by love. And if it's truly motivated by love, listen, you love, You do things well. You do well, and you do well when you serve the community rather than your own will. You are doing the right thing when you serve the community rather than your own will. During this pandemic, are you serving the community or are you serving your own will? Is the Church of Jesus Christ serving the community? Or are we just serving our own will? And of course, we know where that comes from. That comes from Philippians 2. Let me read it. I've read this a lot lately. Philippians chapter 2. Let me turn the page here. Philippians chapter 2, verse, let's see here. We'll go back. Let's see, Philippians 2. Well, we could go all the way. There's a lot of places here we could look here. We'll just go to verse. We'll go back to Philippians chapter 2. We'll go back to verse 3. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem others better than themselves, looking not every man on his own things, but every man also on the things of others. It's looking out for others, all right? That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to show a love and concern for other people, that you look out for them more than you're looking out for yourself. I mean, this is so basic Christianity that I feel has been lost in 2020. All right, let's continue. We only got about three more paragraphs here. Oftentimes, there seems to be love, and it is rather a fleshly mind, because natural inclination, self-will, hope of reward, and desire of our own interest will seldom be absent. I hear that. Now, again, I stated that we do everything out of love. We do everything out of love. We either do it for love for self, love for others, or love for God. And what Thomas à Kempis says is that oftentimes there seems to be love. Sometimes you see someone doing something in the church and you're like, man, they're doing that because they love people. And it seems to be done out of love, but in many cases, it's rather a fleshly mind, because the natural inclination, this is the natural inclination in all of us, self-will, hope of reward, and a desire for our own interest will seldom be absent. It's seldom going to be absent that those selfish desires are there. So we always have to ask ourselves, when we're doing something, like love, we should do all things out of love. Sometimes we have to ask ourselves, what love is motivating this action? What love? Is it my own self-will? Am I doing this really ultimately to get something? This shows up in families. It shows up in churches, that you do certain things, but you're doing it to get. You're doing it for a reason. And we have to ask ourselves that. He continues in the next paragraph. He who has true and perfect love seeks himself in nothing, but only desires in all things the glory of God. I want you to hear this. Listen to this carefully. The person who has true and perfect love, seeks himself in nothing. Self never comes into play. When you're doing something out of a true and perfect love, you seek to exist. You don't seek yourself. You're not seeking your will. You're not seeking your rights. You're not seeking your way. Again, when we are to do works out of love, and there's three motivations: love for self, love for others, and love for God. What is it? Now, love for God should lead to love for others, but I think we should love others ultimately because we're motivated by a love for God. I think that there's a connection here. We just always have to ask ourselves, what is motivating this action? True and perfect love seeks himself in nothing, but only desires in all things the glory of God. Continues. He also envies none, because he is in love with no private joy. Neither wills he to rejoice in himself, but wishes above all things to be made happy in the enjoyment of God. So you envy nothing, because in your love, you're in love with no private joy. Neither wills he to rejoice in himself, but wishes above all things to be made happy in the enjoyment of God. Do you desire to be happy in the enjoyment of God? Then he continues, he attributes nothing that is good to any man, but wholly refers to God, from whom, as from the fountains of all things, proceed, and whom finally all the saints rest in fruition. All right? In other words, in producing fruit. In other words, you don't look at a person and go, look at how good that person is. You realize any good they do is ultimately because of God. You see God. You don't see the person. Oh, whoever has but one spark of true love would surely feel that all earthly things will be full of vanity. If we truly had a spark of love, of true love, we would realize that all earthly things are full of vanity because we would love God above all else. Everything would be motivated by a love for God. Now, and that's the end of the chapter. It's very quick and to the point. So, now there's a lot of things he said there, and there's one phrase I may come back to at a later time, but I don't want it to divert from what we have in front of us. All right, here's the thing. Let's work through this. You cannot be motivated to do evil because you love people. Just because you love someone does not give you the ability to do evil for them. No, there's never right to do evil. Love is never an excuse to do evil. Love is never an excuse to do evil. Not for a worldly thing, not for someone you love. You can never do evil. All right. However, we are to do things motivated by love. All right. We are to do things motivated by love, but we run into a problem because whenever we do things, those actions, love is the motivation, but it's either a self-love, it's a love for others, or it's a love for God. And what ultimately I think he's saying is a love for God is what should motivate our love for others. It should never be motivated by a love for self. It should never be. Now I think we think our love is more pure than it is. Look, we all have love, but it's not always pure. Sometimes you love others because of a need you have for acceptance, for community, for friends, for family. Like sometimes you love others, but it's so self-driven. It's because of something you need, something you like. You're trying to fulfill a need in you. You're trying to make you happy. You're trying to make your life better. So you love other people simply as a tool to benefit yourself. Loving others is not about you. You don't see yourself in it. You see them. It's not about what you get out of it. Right? That's so why do you love? Is it because of self? Is it because of others? Which sometimes you're only loving others ultimately for yourself, or are you doing so because you love God? Now, I don't have an easy answer on how to determine that. This requires spiritual surgery. This requires you to do spiritual exploratory surgery where you're looking inside of yourself, asking what's really motivating you. And remember, in many cases in the monastery, if you know how it works, they have a very strict schedule. During this time, you do this. During this time, you do this. Sometimes you're with the group doing probably the liturgy of the hours. You're doing all of that. Sometimes you're having your meal. Sometimes you're walking. But a lot of times you're sitting in a room and you have a time of spiritual reading, right? Where maybe there's a book like The Imitation of Christ where you're reading that, and then you're to read, and then you're to stop and spend a lot of time meditating. A lot of that time is spent meditating. Like in our culture, it's just read to get to the end of the book. Spiritual reading is where you read and you stop and you spend time meditating and thinking and chewing this over. This chapter, there's a lot there to consider about why we love, what's our motivation for love, and how we love. All right, I'll stop right there. That's a very short chapter, but I don't have a lot more time either way. I didn't think we were even going to get there. There's another phrase there I really wanted to look at, and I've got to do some meditating on it because there's some thoughts there that I would like to, but I think it takes away from the overall theme of the chapter. All right, but there you have it. That's let me give you that chapter again. Again, The Imitation of Christ is available online. It's absolutely free. If you want a copy of the book for free, I've told you in the last episode what you can do to get a free copy. I won't go through it now because of time, but that was book 1, chapter 15, Works Done for Love by Thomas à Kempis. If you see something else in that chapter that jumps out at you, let me know what it is. Email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. There's a little, we'll call that a spiritual snack for this morning. Not a full meal, but there's a snack, and right there could give you plenty to meditate on this Sunday, Lord's Day. Use the Lord's Day for the Lord and use it for that kind of thing. All right, there you have it. All right, everyone have a great day. God bless.